If I asked you to bet your entire life savings on which man at this backyard barbecue is the multi-millionaire, who would you pick? On the left, you have a 65-year-old guy in a faded Target polo flipping burgers and glancing at his 15-year-old Toyota Camry. On the right, you have a guy in a $2,000 custom suit, swirling a glass of vintage wine, talking loudly about his new Porsche 911. If you pick the guy in the suit, you just lost everything. You fell for the American delusion. That guy in the suit isn't rich, he is a high-speed financial wreck. He is 3 months behind on that mansion and maxed out on credit. The guy in the faded polo, he just cashed a $3 million dividend check and didn't even tell his wife because it didn't change his day. This is the reality of wealth in 2026. The people looking rich are often drowning, and the people looking ordinary are building empires in silence. I'm King, and I am a wealth architect. My job is to hand you the X-ray glasses to see through the facade of the economy and show you the structural blueprints of real freedom. Today, we are going to dismantle the lies marketing has sold you and rebuild your financial future from the bedrock up. If you are tired of the hamster wheel, subscribe to this channel and like this video right now. We are about to turn the lights on in a dark room. Now, let's look at the cold hard data, because the math of wealth does not care about your feelings or your social media feed. The Federal Reserve releases a report called the Survey of Consumer Finances every 3 years, and the most recent data tells a story that should keep most people awake at night. If we imagine the wealth distribution of the United States as a massive 217-story skyscraper where each floor represents a certain level of net worth, most of the population is trapped in the basement. The median net worth for an American household is around $192,000. That sounds like a decent chunk of change until you realize that for the vast majority of people, that number is almost entirely tied up in the equity of their primary residence. They don't have $192,000 in the bank, they have a house they can't eat and a mortgage they have to pay every single month. When you strip away the home equity, the median American has less than $50,000 in liquid assets. Now, let's look at the top. To even get into the top 10% of households, you need a net worth of roughly $2.6 million. To hit the top 1%, you're looking at $13 million. The gap between the middle and the top isn't a crack in the sidewalk, it's the Grand Canyon. But here is the most fascinating part of the data. A huge percentage of those people in the top 10% aren't brain surgeons or high-powered CEOs. They are teachers, postal workers, and middle managers who mastered a single, boring, repetitive skill. They captured the spread between their income and their lifestyle. Think about the math of a public school teacher. Let's call him Robert. Robert starts teaching at 22 with a starting salary of $45,000. In the eyes of society, Robert is lower middle class. But Robert understands something that the guy in the Porsche doesn't, the power of the S&P 500 and the law of compounding. If Robert consistently lives on 80% of his income and invests just $600 a month into a low-cost index fund that tracks the total stock market, something miraculous happens. Over the last century, the American stock market has returned an average of about 10% annually. If Robert does this for 40 years, by the time he's 62, he is sitting on a nest egg of approximately $3.3 million. Let that sink in. Robert never made six figures. He never had a corner office. He never caught a lucky break on a meme stock or a crypto pump and dump. He simply bought a piece of the American economy every single month, rain or shine, through recessions, wars, and pandemics. His total out-of-pocket contribution over those 40 years was only $288,000. The other $3 million was generated by the market while he was sleeping, teaching history, and enjoying his life. This is what I call the silent millionaire strategy. It's not flashy, it's not fast, but it is mathematically inevitable if you have the discipline to execute it. Now, let's look at the counter logic, the high income trap. This is where most high-earning Americans, like our lawyer Julian, get slaughtered. Julian makes $250,000 a year. He feels rich, so he acts rich. After federal and state taxes, his take-home pay is roughly $160,000. He buys a $1.2 million house in a gated community because that's what lawyers do. The mortgage, property taxes, and insurance eat up $7,000 a month. He leases 2 luxury cars for $2,500 a month. He sends his 2 kids to private school for $4,000 a month. Toss in country club fees, high-end groceries, and a couple of European vacations to keep up appearances, and Julian is spending $14,000 a month just to exist. At the end of the year, he has maybe $5,000 left over if he's lucky. Julian is rich by income standards, but his net worth is stagnant. He is one bad month, one law firm downsizing, or one health crisis away from total insolvency. He is a high-paid slave to his own lifestyle. This is lifestyle creep in its most lethal form. The system is designed to encourage this. Every credit card offer, every car commercial, and every social media algorithm is fine-tuned to make you feel inadequate if you aren't spending every cent you earn. They want you to be Julian because Julian is a profit center for the banks. They don't want you to be Robert because Robert is free. The emotional toll of these two paths couldn't be more different. Let's dive into the life of Robert, the teacher. Robert lives in a modest 3-bedroom home he bought in the 90s. It's paid off now because he has no debt. His cost of living is incredibly low. He experiences what I call financial calm. When the stock market drops 20%, Robert doesn't panic. He actually smiles because he knows he's buying more shares at a discount. He doesn't have to prove his worth to his neighbors. He doesn't care if people think he's just a teacher. His wealth is invisible, and that invisibility is his superpower. It gives him the ultimate luxury, the ability to say no. He can retire whenever he wants. He can spend his Tuesdays reading in the park or volunteering. He isn't working because he has to. He's working because he chooses to. There is a deep, quiet dignity in that kind of life. It's a life built on the bedrock of reality rather than the shifting sands of ego. Robert isn't chasing a status he can't afford. He's building a legacy that will last for generations. Then there's Julian. On the outside, Julian is the man everyone envies. He walks into a room and people notice the watch, the suit, the aura of power. But inside, Julian is a hollow shell of anxiety. He wakes up at 4 a.m. every morning with a knot in his stomach, wondering how many billable hours he can squeeze out of the day. He can't afford to take a vacation where he actually unplugs because the moment he stops working, the money stops flowing and the mountain of debt he's sitting on starts to crumble. He feels like he's running a race on a treadmill that keeps getting faster. He looks at his Porsche and doesn't see a beautiful machine. He sees a $1,500 monthly payment that he's tethered to for the next 4 years. Julian is trapped in the golden handcuffs. He hates his job, he's exhausted, and he hasn't had a meaningful conversation with his wife in months because they're both too stressed about their image. This is the tragedy of the modern American professional. They traded their freedom for a collection of expensive things that they don't even have the time to enjoy. Julian is living a lie, and the weight of that lie is crushing his soul. I remember meeting a man like Julian a few years ago. He was a successful surgeon, earning nearly $500,000 a year. Then he came to me for financial advice because at age 55, he had less than $100,000 in his retirement account. He was in tears. He told me, "I've spent 30 years saving people's lives and I can't even afford to save my own." He had fallen into the trap of thinking that a high income meant he didn't need to be disciplined. He thought the money would always be there. But the money wasn't the problem. His philosophy was the problem. He had been tricked into believing that wealth is what you spend, when in reality, wealth is what you save and invest. It's the money you don't see, it's the garage you don't build, the car you don't buy, and the upgrade you don't take. True wealth is the gap between your ego and your income. So, how do you become Robert? How do you escape the Julian trap and build a life of quiet, massive wealth? It requires a complete tactical overhaul of how you handle every single dollar that passes through your hands. The first step is what I call the foundation phase. You cannot build a skyscraper on a swamp. You must establish a 3 to 6 month emergency fund in a high-yield savings account. This isn't for investing, this is your "I'm not a victim" fund. It's what allows you to sleep at night when the transmission blows or the roof leaks. Once that foundation is set, you have to go on a warpath against bad debt. Credit card debt is a financial cancer. With interest rates hovering around 20 to 25%, carrying a balance is like trying to swim with a lead backpack. You must use the debt snowball or debt avalanche method to kill those balances with extreme prejudice. Every dollar you pay in interest to a bank is a dollar that isn't working for your future self. Step 2 is the 15% rule. You must automate your investments. Do not wait until the end of the month to see what's left over to save, because the answer will always be zero. The human brain is wired to spend what is available. You have to pay yourself first. Set up an automatic transfer from your paycheck directly into your investment accounts, your 401k, your Roth IRA, or your brokerage account. Start with 15% of your gross income. If you can't do 15%, start with 5% and increase it by 1% every 6 months until it hurts. This money should be invested in low-cost, broad market index funds. I'm talking about things like VTI, Vanguard Total Stock Market, or VOO, Vanguard S&P 500. Why? Because these funds own pieces of the most profitable companies in the world. When Apple sells an iPhone, when Amazon delivers a package, or when Microsoft sells a software license, you get a tiny piece of that profit. You don't need to pick the next big thing. You just need to own the entire engine of global capitalism. Step 3 is managing the Joneses. This is the hardest part because it's psychological. You have to learn to be okay with being uncool. You have to be okay with driving a 5-year-old car while your neighbor brings home a brand new SUV. You have to be okay with a modest home in a safe neighborhood instead of a mansion in a prestigious zip code. Remember this, the people you are trying to impress don't actually care about you, and the people who do care about you don't need to be impressed. Every time you are tempted to buy something luxury to boost your status, ask yourself, is this worth 3 years of my freedom? Because that's the trade-off. Every $50,000 you spend on a depreciating asset today is $50,000 plus 30 years of compounded growth that you are taking away from your future self. Step 4 is time arbitrage. The greatest advantage you have is not your intelligence, your education, or your connections. It is time. If you are in your 20s or 30s, you are sitting on a gold mine. A single dollar invested at age 20 is worth roughly $88 by the time you retire. A dollar invested at age 40 is only worth about $7. The math is brutal. You have to start now, even if it's just $50 a month. Don't wait for a better time to invest. The market will always have reasons to be scared. There will always be a headline saying the world is ending. Ignore it. The secret to wealth isn't timing the market. It's time in the market. Be the person who stays the course when everyone else is panicking. Be the person who buys more when the market is red. Be the person who understands that volatility is the price of admission for long-term returns. The final step is developing wealth wisdom. This is about more than just money, it's about your mindset. You have to stop viewing money as a tool for consumption and start viewing it as a tool for production. Every dollar is a little soldier. Your job is to send those soldiers out into the world to capture more soldiers and bring them back home. If you spend your soldiers on a fancy dinner or a designer bag, they're gone forever. They can never work for you again. But if you invest them, they will multiply. Over time, you will have an army so large that they can support your entire lifestyle without you ever having to lift a finger. That is the definition of true wealth. It's not about having a lot of money, it's about having enough passive income to cover your desired lifestyle. Once you hit that point, you are officially uncancelable. You are free from the whims of a boss, the fluctuations of the economy, and the pressures of society. As we wrap this up, I want you to make a choice. You can leave this video and go back to the status quo. You can keep chasing the next shiny object, keep upgrading your life every time you get a raise, and keep living with that low-grade fever of financial anxiety. You can be Julian, looking rich but feeling poor. Or you can choose the path of Robert. You can choose to be the person who builds in silence. You can choose the discipline of compounding over the dopamine hit of spending. It won't be easy. You will have to say no to things you want today so you can say yes to the life you deserve tomorrow. You will have to ignore the critics and the skeptics who don't understand your vision. But I promise you, when you reach that point of financial calm, when you look at your bank account and realize that you own your time and your life, every sacrifice will have been worth it. Wealth is not a mystery, it is a formula. It is income minus expenses multiplied by time and rate of return. Most people focus only on the income part of the equation, but the real magic happens in the expenses and time parts. You have more control over your future than you think. You don't need a miracle, you need a plan and the guts to follow it. I want to hear from you in the comments below. How old are you and what is your freedom number? The amount of money you need to never have to work again. Let's start a conversation. If you found value in this script, share it with someone who needs a wake-up call, someone who is earning a lot but has nothing to show for it. Let's help them break the cycle. The system is designed to keep you spending. The culture is designed to keep you comparing. But you are designed for something greater. You are designed to be an architect of your own destiny. Don't just work for money, make money work for your freedom. This is the king style of living. It's about power, it's about precision, and it's about total control. Thank you for watching, and thank you for being part of this community. I'll be back soon with more blueprints for your success. Until then, stay disciplined, stay focused, and keep building. I'm King, and I'll see you in the next one. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Your future self will thank you. Now get out there and start building your empire, $1 at a time. The world doesn't need more people who look rich, it needs more people who are truly free. Let's make sure you're one of them.